Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Brian's Horror Corner, and welcome to this Scream Factory movie review video as part of my Scream Factory review series for the month of May 2023. So this will be the last video for this series as we've approached the end of May here. So this will be the eighth video. I got eight in, which is pretty good considering where I thought I at the beginning where I thought I'd end up at. Of course, we can't get through any sort of collection video, review video, without doing an anthology movie. If you know me and you know my channel, you know I like the horror anthology movies, and I have a lot of them in all of my collections, Scream Factory being no exception. So, for this video, we're going to go ahead and take a look at one from the early 90s, which is John Carpenter's Body Bags that I have on Blu-ray and DVD here. Zip yourself in tight is the tagline, which is very appropriate. Um, so yeah, Body Bags. I'd never seen this movie before, just like a lot of movies. For this, obviously for this series, but in my collection overall. Um, so I didn't know that much about it. I didn't know that it was actually made as a sort of a parallel to Tales from the Crypt in the 90s. Except this being on Showtime, this aired on Showtime in August of 1993, where Tales from the Crypt was HBO, but very much in the same vein. And when I watched this movie and I found that out, it kind of made sense to me because it does really feel like a Tales from the Crypt kind of movie or like three-part series, TV series. So anyway, let's just go ahead and get into it. So, Body Bags is a 1993 American horror comedy anthology television film. Boy, that's a mouthful to describe it. It's a film featuring three unconnected stories with bookend segments featuring John Carpenter, Tom Arnold, and Toby Hooper as deranged morgue attendees. It was directed by Carpenter and Hooper, with Larry Sulkus handling the bookend segments. It first aired on August 8th, 1993. It is notable for its numerous celebrity cameo appearances. So yeah, that's the gist of it. So as far as the premise, we've got a creepy-looking coroner introducing three different horror tales involving his current work on various gruesome cadavers and body bags. So you have the first segment, the gas station. You have the second segment, which is hair, and you have the third segment, which is eye. Um, and then at the end, the coroner is finishes telling his last tale when he hears a noise from outside the morgue. He crawls back inside a body bag, revealing himself to be a living cadaver. The noise is the noise is shown to be the return of two other morgue workers who began to autopsy the John Doe corpse of the narrator. So that's the big twist, I guess, if you want to say. Not that big of a twist. But yeah, as far as so going through the individual segments, the gas station is basically our slasher segment, if you will. There's like three different horror subgenres in this anthology series. Um, so the gas station is one about a new the first night of a young lady who's doing the graveyard shift at this gas station booth. Um, and of course, on the radio, they hear that there's an escaped mental patient nearby that might be heading for that area. So, um, it goes from there. The best thing about this segment, well, I'll get into it with my reviews. The second segment, Hair. These first two are both directed by John Carpenter, by the way. But Hair is about a man who's that I can relate to this. It's about a middle-aged man. That part I can't relate to, but he's losing his hair and he's very self-conscious about it. So he's looking for some kind of hair transplant treatment. He tries to do some things like coloring his head to make it look like hair, and then some hair pieces, and his girlfriend's not having any of it. She says it looks terrible. So finally he comes across this ad on TV played by David Warner, actually, who's sort of this hair transplant doctor, that can give him what he wants, basically, and it goes from there. And then the third segment is I. It's entitled I. This one's with Mark Hamill, who plays this minor league amateur baseball player who ends up in a car accident, gets his eye stabbed out, basically has to get an eye transplant. That ends up at first it looks great and it's turning out well, but he ends up having these weird visions and things, and it kind of goes from there. So I don't want to give too much away of any of the segments, even though this movie's been out for 30 years, but still. Um, as far as the cast goes, so in the wraparound segment, of course, we have John Carpenter as the coroner and cadaver. Tom Arnold is morgue worker number one. Toby Hooper's morgue worker number two. In the gas station segment, we have Robert Carradine as Bill, Alex Datcher as Anne. In the hair segment, we have Stacy Keach as Richard Colberts, David Warner as Dr. Locke, Sheena Easton as Megan, and Deborah Harry as the nurse. And then in the eye segment, we have Mark Hamill as Brent Matthews, Twiggy as Kathy Matthews, John Agar as Dr. Lang, and Roger Corman as Dr. Bregman. So you can tell just from the cast there, there's a lot of horror related cameos and performances by directors and actors from other movies. I didn't actually mention a lot of them in the gas station. You've got Wes Craven, you've got David Naughton, among others who appear in that one. So yeah, you got a lot of names, a lot of name recognition if you're a horror fan in this movie, and that's definitely one of the biggest pros about it. But that's the setup, the premise, and the cast, and the three stories for the 1993 Showtime anthology movie Body Bags. As I said, this ended up being a movie that aired on Showtime that was originally meant to be a Showtime Tales from the Crypt TV series, if you will. But I researched and found out through interviews, even on this. Sorry about the lighting there. Even in the special features, there's an interview with some of the actors that were in this movie, including John Carpenter. The reason it didn't become a TV series is because the studio tried to go, or the network tried to go cheapo on it. They wanted them to move the production of it up to Canada. And John Carpenter wasn't particularly interested in doing that because he wouldn't be able to have the performers in it that he wanted to, or the people involved behind the camera as well that he wanted to by having it in Los Angeles. Um, so that's the reason why it never went any further than just these three segments that were done, like I said, initially for a TV pilot, a TV series pilot entitled Body Bags. And they ended up sort of trimming up the tape and wrapping it up into a nice 90-minute anthology movie. So let's just go ahead and get into it, starting with the pros or the things that I liked about Body Bags. Um, the biggest pros, I really enjoyed the wraparound segment with John Carpenter as the cadaver slash coroner and how he introduced each of the stories. It was really fun with good makeup effects and a good dry, humorous performance by Carpenter that I thought worked. So yeah, I mean, if you know me and my horror anthologies, you know I'm big on the wraparound segments. I'm not as big on just having shorts thrown at you without any context. I like having the wraparounds introducing and the individual segments and then having a nice wrap up at the end. And there's some anthology movies that don't have one. There's some anthology movies that have one, but it's kind of cheap and it doesn't really work. This is probably the well, I don't want to say I kind of have to say it's the best part of this movie, even though I didn't hate any of the individual segments. But I just love John Carpenter playing this cadaver, this coroner. Just his very dry sense of humor that he has. It's kind of the opposite of the Crypt Keeper from Tales from the Crypt, who's played by John Kassir excellently. But it's his performance is very over the top with a lot of comedic puns and stuff. And um, John Carpenter plays this coroner with some humor for sure, but it's more dry humor. It's more like not quite as over the top. And I thought it really works because of John Carpenter himself. When you watch him in interviews and stuff, he really played to that character, and it just worked really well. And I thought the makeup that was done on Carpenter as the cadaver was very good, very effective. Yeah, it was just a really fun wraparound, and the ending twist of the wraparound. I thought it's not mind blowing, and it's not necessarily something you didn't see coming a mile away. It worked really well, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun way to wrap up the overall anthology, and I enjoyed the humor and his introductions to each of the stories. So, yeah, I have to say that I really enjoyed the wraparound segment with John Carpenter. Some people thought his performance was wooden, but that was kind of the point. I thought his performance was great personally. He's not an actor, obviously, but the kind of movie that he made and what he was in, I thought he did a great job, and it fit really well. So That was the number one pro. And then piggybacking on that, I liked and I thought it was very unique how the individual stories were introduced by him using these cadavers or different bodies to introduce each of the stories. It was really fun and interesting way to do it that I hadn't seen before, and I thought it made for a really cohesive anthology overall. So, yeah, just everything related to the wraparound story really worked for me. I thought the performances throughout this movie are really quite good all the way through, especially I have to note especially two performances, Stacy Keach and Mark Hamill, who are the main characters in two of the three segments. They were phenomenal. I'm a big fan of both of them. Mark Hamill is definitely a different role from him. Obviously, I know him best as Luke Skywalker, and he's done some voiceover work for the most part. He was in the newest Chucky movie, and he was the Joker, and he's great at those roles. But for 1993, I imagine for people seeing this for the first time, this was quite a switch from what he'd done before this. And I thought he was great. Stacy Keach, who I'm a big fan of as well, in the hair segment as the main character was very good. But really, even all the cameos that came through, everybody kind of knew what movie they were in, and that really made it work. Nobody came in and tried to be overly serious or overly different than the kind of movie that this was, or the other performers. And I thought even the people that did the cameos were really good in their small bit parts, and everybody was having fun with it. Everybody was on the same page, knowing what kind of movie they were in. Yeah, the performances were really strong across the board. You don't always get that in horror anthology movies. Um, but yeah, that really stood out to me. Great performances. Really loved the cameos that we got. I thought overall there was some really good makeup effects, especially on Stacy Keach and the hair segment, when he especially when he morphs what he morphs into towards the end. John Carpenter in the wraparound, and then Mark Hamill with the eye. I thought they all had some really good practical makeup effects, which I believe was done by Rick Baker, if I'm not mistaken. So probably not a huge surprise that the makeup effects were good with him. So that really stood out to me. I like that the anthology had three different stories that touched on three different subgenres of horror. You have the slasher, basically, with the gas station. You have the comedy slash sci-fi with Hair, and you have the supernatural possession story with the Eye, or just Eye, not the Eye, with Mark Hamill. So I really enjoyed that. I thought it made for a nice variety anthology movie, a good variety of anthology tales. The other thing that surprised me is I thought the humor worked really well throughout the entire movie for me. It never felt forced or out of place. It was just the right amount for this kind of anthology movie, and it made it fun. So, yeah, I really enjoyed the humor, and I think that kind of goes back to John Carpenter's just his overall writing and directing, and his overall humor that you can see in interviews and stuff, and what he gives as the cadaver here, the coroner. So it all just really worked from a cohesive standpoint on that front. Overall, I just really enjoyed all three segments. I thought they were all really solid. There's really not a bad one in the bunch. Some of them are kind of out there, but they're all fun and they all work well for this. So it would have been interesting to see what how long Body Bags would have gone on as a TV series if they could have, if either Showtime had decided it's okay to film it in California and Hollywood and John Carpenter remained involved with it, or yeah, it would have been interesting to see, kind of going head to head with Tales from the Crypt. But as far as cons go, I kind of wanted more overall from it. I think given the players that are involved here, not just Toby Hooper and John Carpenter behind the or behind the directing of this movie, but all the cameos and all the people involved, from David Naughton to Wes Craven to David Warner, just all the horror icons, Roger Corman, John Agar. I just kind of felt underwhelmed at the end of it. Again, it's not bad. It wasn't like I left thinking it was bad. I remember thinking it was fun. But from a horror anthology standpoint, it's kind of underwhelming as well in a way. And I think part of that probably has to do with the fact that it was shot as a TV series and not a horror anthology movie, which I didn't realize, but John Carpenter's not a fan of anthology. I didn't know it until I watched the interview and the special features here. But he did say that anthology for TV series is okay. He doesn't mind that, but he's not a fan for movies, which was kind of interesting. But Yeah, some of the special effects, especially in the hair segment, are bad. The little segment, the little serpent hairs that we see in the magnifying glass, they're really cheesy. Really don't hold up that well. They're definitely dated for the early 90s. As I said, it was made as a TV anthology, so not a high theatrical budget in terms of the settings or high quality overall production. But it doesn't kill the movie because you still have Toby Hooper and John Carpenter, especially, who are able to take a lower budget and still give us a lot of fun and a lot of entertainment from it. But those are just kind of some cons that stood out for me. The score I didn't think was anything memorable, especially with Carpenter's involvement, who's known for horror scores. That was kind of disappointing, to be honest. I was expecting more there. The overall tone was a bit uneven, not necessarily in terms of the comedy, as I said, but like the second segment was a very humorous segment. The first segment was a pretty straightforward, kind of humorous, kind of slasher, serious segment. But then the last segment was really serious, very dark in a lot of ways, especially with a wife that's pregnant with a child involved and her husband going nuts on her. So it was kind of, it was a little bit, I don't want to say all over the place, but the tone didn't quite work all the way through on the same level. But some of these might be nitpicks. Again, I think keeping in mind that it was for a TV show and not a theatrical movie, that's probably why I was felt underwhelmed by it, even in comparison to other horror anthology movies. But that being said, I still really enjoy this. I'm really glad to have it in my Screen Factory collection. It does have some nice special features, especially it does have audio commentaries with John Carpenter on each of his segments. And then you got the producer Sandy King on the I segment, a couple of the other actors as well. There's a nice featurette on zipping body bags with John Carpenter, Sandy King, and some of the actors, Stacy Keach and Robert Carradine, where they kind of go into it a little bit, the movie, and then there's a trailer for it. So yeah, I don't know how well you guys can see that, but it's a nice Screen Factory collector's edition, the Blu-ray and DVD combo pack, and I'm glad to have it in my collection. I did enjoy Body Bags. I don't know if my expectations were a little higher because I saw everybody that was in it. But that being said, I'm not. I was disappointed. It was kind of underwhelming. I still have fun with it. It's not scary. The segments are all different. You can look at it two different ways. Two of the segments are kind of transplant, like body horror transplant segments, and the other one's kind of the odd man out with the gas station being a slasher. Or you could look at it saying the gas station and the eye are the two more serious ones, and then you have the one in the middle, which is definitely played more for humor, more lighthearted with David Warner and Stacy Keach. But either way, all three segments are fun. I don't necessarily know that they all go together great, but the wraparound's the best thing about it, and John Carpenter's involvement. So I'm going to give this a 7.5 out of 10. I really enjoyed Body Bags. I'm glad I have it in my collection. It's not the best horror anthology movie in my collection or that I've seen, but it's certainly not terrible. As I said, it's solid. It's fun. So 7.5 out of 10 for Body Bags. Go ahead and comment down below if you guys have seen Body Bags from 1993, what you think of it, if you like it, why or why not. Comment down below. Please like this video and hit the notification bell down below so you don't miss any of my great horror content, and therefore subscribe to my channel as well so you don't miss any of that content. You can get reminders. I'll have an intro video for my June series coming out in the next couple days. But I hope you guys enjoyed this series. I hope you enjoyed this particular review video, but the overall series. I hope you had fun with it. I certainly did. Gave me a chance to watch some more of my Scream Factory movies, which I'm sure I'll do another one of these at some point down the road. But hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a good Memorial Day and stay scared.